Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope I seem excited. I just recorded this entire video and then found out the audio wasn't working, so I'm a little bummed out. But today we are talking about something exciting, which is a game called Liminal Point. Now, I want to clarify this is not a sponsored video, but this is an opportunity that I have in the future to talk to the developers of this game. It is a psychological horror game, a survival horror game, which is based off of the classics of the genre. And when I say based off of, I mean it takes heavy inspiration from, but it's very clearly also its own thing. By the way, I love the main character they've designed for this game. It looks like a character that I'm not stealing their idea here, but I'm saying that I would make if I was making my own survival horror game. They very clearly are right up my alley with a lot of this. And so I reached out to the developers of this game, Hideworks, who had previously made a game which was The Devil is in the Details. And I wanted to talk to them about the game, and they were very gracious, very nice. And so in the coming weeks, I will be speaking to them regarding this game, and I really do hope you will stay tuned for that. Now, today we're just going to kind of break down what it is, why I think you should care about it, because it's why I care about it, and also why I'm doing this is because for me, I do have to balance topics I cover on these channels just because of the way the YouTube algorithm works, the way searchability and all that stuff works. They bury you, which I hate that. But for me, like, something I've noticed over the course of making videos is I've always been frustrated with huge companies. You know, I've always been frustrated with like things that they've done. And I even have an upcoming video on something that a big company did that I really disagree with. And looking at that, I thought, what better way to celebrate, more independent creators than to actually feature them on here when I can, to talk to them, to share their stories, to talk about these things, because eventually I want to become an independent creator as well, where I can make my own stories and things like that too. So I want to celebrate people like Hideworks. I want to talk to them in the near future. I've already arranged it informally. We have to set up the date, but I'm excited for that, and I hope you'll stick around for it. And I appreciate you sticking around for the intro. I do have a question of the day for you, by the way, for today, which is, are there any other projects, they can be big, small, or anything in between, or creators or groups that you would like me to talk to about what and why? Also, if you don't want to answer that one, I am wondering what your favorite horror game is and why. But if there is someone you want me to talk to, and maybe you have their contact info, or it's important to you, or you have an in with them, you can always let me know. DegenerateJBusiness@gmail.com is a great way to reach me. And if you are a creator, that's also a great way to reach me. I am not more important than anybody. I literally am just a normal person. So having the opportunity to speak to these devs in the future is very exciting to me. Now, the planned release date for this game right now is 2026, and there is not a lot of footage out there of it yet, but there is going to be more footage revealed at the Horror Games Awards, I believe on the 31st of May. So by the time we talk to them, we will be able to show off more footage. But if you wonder why there's not a ton being shown, this is what we have so far. But that said, it is a psychological survival horror game that pays homage to the classics of the genre while delivering a modern, spine-chilling experience. And it's supposed to blur the lines between reality and nightmares. This is set on a desolate, fog-covered island shrouded in mystery, and you step into the role of Lyra. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. We will ask Hideworks when we speak to them. But she was a once rising rock star. So to me, it's like Lyra, like lyrics. I believe that's the actual, inference here, as she uncovers the haunting truth behind the disappearance of her bandmate, Mira, and the sinister secrets that the island holds. Now, what's interesting about this is that there's different places that you actually explore. There's abandoned locations on the island, and you encounter cryptic messages, twisted creatures that will defy understanding, and a haunting past that refuses to stay buried. With every step, the world around her becomes more surreal, challenging her grip on reality and forcing her to confront the depths of her own psyche. Can you unravel the truth, or will the island claim you as its next victim? Now, here's the thing I want to mention. First off, there is no one game that they are inspired by. There's multiple from the genre. But when we think of classics in the genre, two that come to mind for me immediately are Resident Evil and Silent Hill. In the best way possible, I see a lot of inspiration from those games. Seeing things like the more mystery-based story where you're actually figuring out what's going on as you go through. Games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil are very, very good at that kind of thing. And I believe that that's kind of the direction they're going with this, especially with that mystery based on, other characters disappearing and actually learning what Lyra's past is. I know Jill especially is excited for that because she loves mystery games, and I think growing up, she didn't know, my wife Jill, didn't really know that there was such a crossover with horror games in that way where you're kind of unraveling the story, and that's definitely a direction that Hideworks is clearly going with their game. Now, they describe the game as a modern take on the genre's timeless formula. There's limited resources, there's tense encounters, and there's an atmosphere essentially of dread. Now, one thing I love is that they show it as a limited inventory. So if you can think back to something like classic Resident Evil, where you'd have blocks and you would have a certain amount of things you would, actually fit in there, that's kind of the general idea that they're going for here, which I think is awesome, because I don't think enough games do that. And it is something that does add both to the tenseness and also, I would say, almost a puzzle-like nature of horror games, where you have to think, okay, well, do I want to carry this gun or this weapon, maybe like a shotgun, for example. Maybe it takes up 4 or 5 spaces out of 12. And you say, okay, well, I don't know if I want to take that, because if I carry the rifle, maybe it only takes 3, or maybe a pistol takes 2. That's the kind of thing they're going for here. And even with some of the puzzle items, I saw one of those for progressing fit into that inventory. To me, I think that's cool because it's actually making you make choices as you play the game and not really holding your hand while you do it. Now, there's only so much gameplay available until they show off the extra 5 minutes, so we might have to show the same footage a couple of times, but they were kind enough to provide me with, the press kit for it and stuff, which I think is really cool. And a lot of the imagery from the character designs all the way down to the environmental designs are right up my alley. They are very classic survival horror, and I'd never want to say that like, oh, this looks just like Silent Hill or anything like that, because I don't want to demean anyone's work in that way and say like, when I say that, I'm not saying like someone took this. What I'm saying is they very clearly love the genre, Like when I look at these monsters and I look at some of the designs for the monsters or the designs for the characters, it harkens back to the 90s for me. Like you have sleek, kind of sexy heroines, and you have these dark and gritty atmospheres, and these monsters that are twisted and warped, and it very much, when I'm looking at it, feels like a spiritual successor to some of my favorite games growing up. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk about this. Now, for example, Lyra in particular, and I love Mira too, but Lyra in particular, not to steal anybody's ideas here, she seems like a character that if I was making a survival horror protagonist, I would want my character to be like her. She's like very cool, she's very sleek, she's kind of sexy, she's got like a beautiful face. Something, without getting like too far Gamergatey here, something that frustrates me about modern games is a lot of them I feel like throw out the fantasy element of it, the, peak humanity aspect of it, the fact that like people want to play as a character that looks like a supermodel or looks like a bodybuilder or looks like something fun. They did that. They combined those ideas artistically with, what looks like a real world and isn't unbelievable. I really like that with the vibes of this game so far from everything I've seen. Now, there is also an original soundtrack for this game. You might say, okay, who cares? Well, it's actually not easy to get that for your own horror game. A lot of the games, unfortunately, it's like with the budget you have to work with what you can do. A lot of them have to have pre-built soundtracks that are used in our projects. They have their own, which I think is really cool and going to make it even more memorable. But also there's the fact that you also go through this island. There's multiple locations like an abandoned mansion. There is a sewer, and the fog visuals to me are very, very reminiscent of something like Silent Hill, which I am obviously a huge fan of. Now, this game is right now going to be on Steam. I have not talked to Hideworks about what I'm about to say, and I'm not promising anything on their account, but my hope is that people like in this community who are watching this video will support this project, and they will support it so much that who knows, maybe in the future we can see it on something else. If games tend to do really, really good, sometimes they get ports. This is the kind of game that I could see being big, and I'm being serious. I could actually see this game being very big, and I could see Hideworks making successors to this game that are also big. There is not enough high value, contained survival horror games that are like the classics without just ripping them off while also being memorable. There's not enough of those out there. There are survival horror games out there, but there's not enough that actually go back to the classics, and they're not afraid to take the best things from them, make them their own, make an entirely unique idea around it, and make their own game. I think there's way too much trend chasing right now in the horror genre, whether it be movies or games, and this is not trend chasing. What this is doing is saying, hey, you know those things that were masterpieces from when you were younger? Let's make a modern one. I respect that. That's the kind of thing I want to see. You're not chasing a trend. You're making your own piece of art because of the things that inspired you and clicked with you. If more big companies would do that, I think we'd see much better games and a much better video game landscape in general. Now, something that Hideworks said to me in email is, in case you mention the topic liminal in your video, or, there's questions about it, because they said that they've seen a lot of YouTubers comment that the game will be focused on the common conception of liminal spaces like the backrooms. That's not the case with this game. When they use the word liminal point in our case refers to a psychological and emotional threshold, a moment of inner transition for Lyra, a personal internal turning point. The title reflects that she's caught between her past and present, between guilt and denial, reality and trauma. The island she returns to is the place where her life fell apart, and it becomes the symbolic point where she's forced to confront everything she's buried. So the title speaks to that boundary, that liminal moment where she has to either face the truth or be consumed by it. And I also want to point out here that as someone with an actual writing degree in English, it's nice to see someone care so much about their story. And I'm being serious. The amount of people that don't care about the story they're telling is mind-boggling to me. And it actually, there are quite a few people out there who participate in storytelling that are either telling a story or participating in the creation of one, who don't have like a focus on what they want to tell, why it matters so much. Things like title, all these things are just throwaway. In the case of Hideworks in this game, that's not the case. There's a very, very personal story being told here. There's a very real mystery here, and there's a very real reason why it's named this. So I'm actually glad I reached out to them and asked them, asked them to talk to me, and that they volunteered this information, because I think it's too bad that there is kind of that misconception going around that if you use a word like liminal, it has to mean one thing. It doesn't, and that's why language is so interesting, because these titles can be very deeply personal and meaningful in different ways, depending on what you make. If somebody else made this game and named it this, it could be a very different thing. So the fact they volunteered this information before it came out, I think is cool. So this is kind of where I want to end the video. I do want to know what you think about all of it, though. If there are any questions you would like me to ask them or anything you're interested in, because I am very excited to speak to them. I can't guarantee that every question will make it into the interview, but I do want to look at some of those. So if you see something like that, leave a like on it, upvote it in the comments. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it. Thank you to Hideworks for speaking to me just over email so far, and I'm excited to speak to you in the future. I hope you watch this video. I hope that it maybe brought a smile to your face the same way that your game is already bringing a smile to mine. So I appreciate that very much. Hope everybody out there has a fantastic day. All the ways to support our channel are the same. I will flash a few of them on the screen right now, but I don't want to take away from this project, so I'm not going to do a big outro. Have a good one. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shway.